Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Education Enclave podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Jess Howe, who is the Foundation Team Leader at Woori Yallock Primary School. Jess is an amazing educator who I've had the privilege of observing from the start of her career right up until now. If you're an early years teacher, this is a must listen. We discussed the foundation classroom, high expectations, coaching, phonics, writing, spelling, and communities of practice. I'm already thinking about a round 2 with Jess, so you might have some questions for Jess or me. If you do, send them through. I hope you enjoy the episode as much as I did. Okay, Jess Howe.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me at school now, and the glamorous backdrop. The school's getting rebuilt at some point.
It is soon, hopefully May next year.
Right. And let me guess, back-to-back wet weather days.
Yes.
Have you got through all right?
It's amazing the difference it makes when they don't get outside and get some fresh air at recess and lunch. But that's okay. We push on.
Yeah, cool. Well, we need it to dry up a little bit. So I'm going to make I don't think it's a bold statement, but I think 6 years ago when we met, I probably wouldn't have anticipated that you and I would both be doing what we're doing now, and having this conversation. And I thought I'd share my recollections of when I first met you and see how it matches up. And, so Brendan Fitzpatrick was assistant principal, and I was principal, and he was in Unlocking Potential, and he went and shadowed another Prin, Justin Butler, over at Selby.
Yeah.
And for a period of time, I thought, I'm just going to muscle my way through until Brendan comes back. And then Brendan didn't come back. He ended up going on and acting at Gembrook Primary School. And so process at school, and Oliver became the acting assistant principal, and now he's substantive principal. And so I needed a teacher. And so I was always forever sort of asking, do you know anyone who'd be good? And it was a funny time of year, I suppose. It wasn't sort of start of the year. So Steph Verhoff said, yeah, I know a girl. And you came for a walk around, came for a tour. And I'm not sure if you did like a little bit of CRT, like full-time sort of CRT, or there was something, I don't know. And then I left you, and now, you are just smashing it left, right, and centre. But is that sort of, I got that kind of right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when I came here, I remember thinking, the school, it's like a rabbit warren, and it's so old and it's so far away, because I was living in South Yarra at that time.
Yeah.
So I thought I'll just get some experience, but I probably won't be there for long. And it's like I'm in my 7th year here now. And I couldn't imagine working anywhere else. So funny how things work out.
Yes. So didn't have the straight pathway to becoming a teacher, didn't go high school, uni teacher. No. So maybe give us a bit of background with that. And what was it that kind of was the trigger to go down the path of teaching?
So I'd always wanted to be a teacher, but if I'm really honest, I was really money hungry when I finished school, and I wanted a job that paid well. And I surprised myself with the score that I got when I finished high school. So I also felt like, I got a good score, so I have to do, something that aligns with that score. I did love business and commerce, and that was one of my strengths in high school. So I did go down that path and did a business degree, and then ended up in recruitment. and sort of fell into IT recruitment for a big global company, working for a big global IT account. And I did enjoy it. I just wasn't passionate about it. And my company were awesome, and they looked after me, and they gave me lots of opportunities and developed me. And when I said that I was bored, offered me something else, and they kept doing that. But I sort of just ended up circling back to this, I'm not passionate about it. And I'd get the Sunday scaries when you had to go back to work on a Monday. And yeah, I don't know, I didn't love it. So I always had that, I guess, that want to be a teacher in the back of my mind. And as I got older, into my late 20s, I just sort of thought, if I have kids, I'm always going to work. I want a job that I want to come back to, and not a job that I have to go back to. So that was also, something that played on my mind. And I just decided to do it at 28. I just decided that I was going to go back and study, and I worked full time for 12 months and studied. And then eventually left my full-time job so that I could finish my studies. But yeah, I don't regret a minute of it. I wish I had done it sooner. But I don't regret also, working in recruitment and doing something else before becoming a teacher. I think it's prepared me for some other things, I guess, some other parts of teaching that uni never prepares you for. So yeah, it's been interesting, but yeah, best decision ever to go back and become a teacher. 100% hands down.
Yeah. Very good. So as a family, we were lucky enough to have you teach our Sammy. And one of I thought it was a pretty cool memory. Beck being a Myo, you had a bit of a sore neck one day, so we were both off, and we just sort of walked in, and I took your reading lesson for about 20 minutes, and you got a bit of a neck massage, and
it was so good. Yeah, the service, amazing.
I think Sammy loved it too, because he was a little bit miffed that I left before he started.
Yeah.
So, and I guess when you started at Woori, it was 5-6, and then 1-2, and now, foundation teacher extraordinaire. And I guess that's what we're going to talk about a fair bit this evening, I think, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course.
So I've got that right. 3-4 is the only year level at this stage.
Which is so funny, because when I was at uni, I did 3 out of my 4 placements were in grade 3. But then, as a teacher, I've actually never officially taught grade 3 or 4.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of time.
Yes.
If you stay in the teaching realm and not, continuing your leadership path, but we'll see, I suppose. I guess for me, obviously, I'm, super proud and impressed with the educator that you've become, and, always knew the talent and potential that was there. But I'll admit, you surprised me how meteoric, that it's been. And I think it was early 2020. It's hard because of COVID, and, you would have already taught Sammy, and as parents we're like, we're so lucky, he had a great year, rah, rah, rah. But then I came and saw you teach in foundation, and it would have been like the first week or week and a half. And I was like super impressed. And I think for me, you have continued on this long line of talented foundation teachers that have really changed the school. There's so many excellent things, and I guess I should say we're talking about Woori Yallock Primary School. But there's so many things that the school does really, really well. But I would probably argue that it's been the, high expectations and the high level of skill that, Jess Wallace, Flick, Amy, and now yourself, as well as all of the other teachers, but I'm pretty sure I've got that right in terms of leaders. And so yeah, how do you think about it, and how do you perceive teaching foundation, leading foundation, and just your thoughts?
It's the best. It's so awesome for a range of reasons. It's also so hard. And this really wise man always says, teaching, hardest job, but best job.
I don't know about wise, and I need some newer sayings, I think.
You do. But I mean, that is prep, really. That is foundation. It's so hard. It's physically demanding. But it's so rewarding, and teaching as a whole is like that, but I think especially in prep, because you see how far they come in such a short amount of time. They have so much growth from that day one prep to the end of prep. It's crazy, but what we do here at Woori is really special with our foundation kids, and we do set some very high expectations for them from the get-go. But year after year, and even with COVID, I mean, this is my first non-COVID year in foundation, so this is the first term 3 I've done at school. But even with COVID, because of the high expectations we set with our preps from the start of the year, it meant that they already had, something to go from whilst they were at home. So whilst they weren't super independent, they had already begun building their independence in writing and in reading, and in maths. So I think they were in a better position to go to remote learning, because of how high we set those expectations from the start. So it's awesome. And coming in as a teacher, I would have had no idea about this at all, about what we can do with 5-year-olds. So it's been awesome for my development. And I think Flick said it yesterday, if you have taught prep here, you can teach anywhere. And I totally agree. I think for my development in the workshop model, gradual release, differentiation, being explicit, I've obviously developed that over the years, but I think I've come leaps and bounds after being in prep. So it's a really special year, I think.
Yeah, and I guess I find it to be a real niche. What yourself and the others that we've mentioned have really brought to the table, and I think, I hope this comes across the right way for anyone who listens, but I think sometimes we can be a little bit too maternal, and lower expectations, and not promote independence, and say, oh no, they're only little, or they can't do it, or we're coming out of COVID, and I think that people need to see it, and I know you have a lot of schools and educators that roll through, and I guess what people need to realise is the context is that you have a number of kids who come in with no letters and sounds, from the get-go, and I think there's been a bit of a shift in the demographic compared to what it used to be, but you are starting from ground zero, and yet very high percentage of kids, get to where they need to by the end of their year with your team.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've had to evolve alongside that, because, we're getting kids that come in with zero literacy skills, even zero concepts of print, no idea how to hold a book. Like you said, that's changing, and probably our incoming preps for next year have our best literacy skills that we've seen. But it is hard. Sometimes we are starting from absolutely nothing. But it's great to see where they end up at the end of the year.
So maybe talk to us about what a week looks like in terms of time allocation, like how much time for reading, for writing, phonics or word work, maths, etc.
Yeah. So without fail, absolute non-negotiable, we do 5 reading, 5 writing, 5 numeracy, and we do 3 spelling a week. And that is how it is from day one. I guess they get a Wednesday off for the first 4 or 5 weeks. So obviously it's 4, but once they're full time, it's the 5. And yeah, I guess you could call our reading and writing, it's like a literacy block, because in that they are doing word work or phonics work as well as reading and writing. And then, yeah, our spelling is heavily phonics based at the start of the year. And as they progress, we move that on. So, yeah, we, like I said, from the get-go, we're straight onto it.
So I think, we'll get the controversial topic out of the way first, and that being phonics. And I guess for me, the frustration is I guess nearly everything works. And I kind of think that there's this notion that some schools don't teach phonics, and I'm clearly not in every school, but I am lucky to work across a fair breadth, and I think everybody does. This whole notion of whole language and those sorts of things. I think the key is that it's explicit and systematic.
Mm-hmm.
I think where you take it as a school, well beyond that everybody needs to sit up and listen, and this is what the conversation needs to be, because it needs to be accepted that it needs to be explicit and systematic, but it's how you differentiate. And you've got kids who can come in and read, and we've already shared that there's plenty of kids who come in with no letters or sounds.
Yeah.
And yet, how then can you teach whole class? How do you differentiate? And so maybe if you want to share with everybody how you go about that as a team.
Yeah, so we have plenty of opportunities to give them some point and need instruction and activities. So if I think about our literacy activity time in our reading block, they get an activity that's point and need. So if they are at the point where they just need to learn to match uppercase and lowercase letters, then they're the kind of activities that they do in that literacy time. However, if they're already, and I'm talking, term 1 prep, if they're already able to then look at starting sounds, so maybe they're looking at a picture and trying to find the letter that matches that starting sound, they're doing that through to building sentences. So in that time, it's targeted point and need activities. And then our spelling as well. So we do cover off all the letter sounds, but then we do to split and mix for their point and need as well. So if they're ready to move on from letter sounds, we're off to short vowels and we're off to blends and digraphs. And that's either they go to a different teacher for that lesson, or they're doing a different activity that matches what they need. So yeah, we're trying to differentiate from day 1 too. And we also have some incoming data, so we know a bit about what our kids know before they start, so we can plan that out from the beginning of the year, and already have an idea of how we can be targeting them from day 1.
And so I guess your scope and sequence, I suppose, with phonics is heavily based around Heidi Ann Mesmer's resource and the assessment. Yeah. And that guides you. And I guess that's what people need to realise, is that there are varying scope and sequences out there. But it is important that you follow that, and then you are explicit based on where the kids are at. Yeah. And the activities that you provide are where they get that deliberate practice to work on their sweet spot. Yeah.
And, I think the biggest thing for us in the last couple of years is that is then driven by the kids. So we have a scope and sequence and we know where to go next, but the kids have to be ready for it. So they've got to demonstrate that that we can move through it. And I think last year and this year, we've been really mindful of that whilst we have this sequence of lessons planned out and ready to go, we don't move on until the kids are ready to move on, or we do if they've nailed it. So it's so like data-driven, student-driven. Weekly, we're looking at that and assessing that, and that's driving how fast or how slow we go.
Yeah. So, no, it sounds, and obviously I'm lucky enough to be able to come and see it in action. This is a bit of a generalisation, but it is something we've spoken about, and I've found in the other schools that I work with that use Mesmer's assessment to drive the phonics work, is that when you come to sort of mid-year and end of year and you're trying to work out where your kids are at, that it tends to be comprehension that's the thing that is holding them back, that it is really, and you have such a huge focus on comprehension within your lessons as well. So do you think I've got that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Good place to be. So
yeah,
I think the other thing for me connected to it, I mean, it's all connected, was towards, I think it was last term, you had your whole school spelling bee, and you had your preps in the final and then your grade fives. And so Sammy was lucky enough to make it, and I was free that day. So I popped down and I'm thinking, you know, the preppies won't take long, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it was round 8 and it was so impressive. And
yeah,
I think it blew a lot of people away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that the combination of what we do with our phonics, but then, you know, the coloured words or the high frequency words as well, really drives them and the kids themselves to be successful. So, they blew us all away with their knowledge. I mean, I had no doubt they were going to be awesome, but they were so good.
Yeah. Probably a few, you know, I think let's keep going with the literacy theme. I guess writing was the focus, has whole school focus this year, narrow and deep. And I think you and Flick collaborated around changing it up a little bit at the start of this year, and influenced by Katie Woodray. So do you want to talk to us a bit about how that influenced you, what you changed, etc.?
Yeah. And I think that, you know, I'm really blessed to work in an environment where we're always evolving. And whilst we have wonderful processes, you know, we do recognise opportunities where we can improve or do better. And maybe what was working in the past, you know, can be improved. And this was a perfect example of my first 2 years in prep. I obviously had continued to do with what we had always or what had always been done, which was totally suitable back then. But I think as my own knowledge and the team that I work with, we sort of sat back. Well, I sat back at the start of the year, and we had this process where we would ask the kids to sketch or to think of an idea and sketch it, and then write it. And, you know, term 1 writing is so hard in prep because they don't know how to write. So a lot of them don't want to write. They're so reluctant because they've got no idea how to do it. And we're saying, well, just, you know, draw a picture and then now just write about it. And I mean, we're only expecting they have a go at letters and things like that. But I sat there and thought, how come we're asking them to think of an idea when we actually haven't taught them how to think of an idea? And I think that was the battle, that we were just like, you know, just think of an idea. Just, you know, what did you do on the weekend, or what's your favorite animal? But we hadn't invested in really teaching them how to think and then how they can draw that out to be something they write about. And I don't know, Flick and I somehow, without even talking, seem to be on the same wavelength. And again, I'm lucky to work in a school where our leadership is so open to anything. And you can say, this is what I'm thinking, and leadership will support you or help you go down that path. And I just mentioned to Flick, why are we like, I don't know why we're asking them to think and then write when we haven't taught them yet. And she was like, yes, I've just read this book and it already is like, it's got this whole other thing. Let's try this. So we just threw out what we had normally did, and highly recommend the book Emergent Writers. We gave the kids just some paper that had been folded to look like a book, and we didn't give them any other instruction other than, here is a book, go and write and draw and do whatever you want. And then from that, we started to build them up. So we were just aiming for pictures at the start. And you know what, 5-year-old, 4-year-old doesn't want to draw? They're more than happy to sit there and draw. So we started with that, and the real narrative in that is that we were teaching them that they're authors. So we spoke about them as authors the whole time, so that they could understand that they can make their own stories and write their own stories. So it was always about being an author. And then, you know, we built them from that, from where they were at. So some of the kids naturally wrote scribbles or wrote some letters, so we could work from there. And then some of the kids just drew pictures, so then we could look at labeling the pictures and you know, thinking about writing some letters next to the pictures, and then moving the kids that were ready to, you know, maybe do some sounds, like if you've drawn a sun, what letter does that start with, and getting that and building from there. And it was so much more successful from the start of term 1 to the end of term 1 to see that we didn't have any reluctant writers. They all wanted to have a go, and they all saw themselves as authors. So they all were willing to have a try at writing letters and building from there to write words, and some of them writing sentences by the end of term 1, which was huge. So yeah, it was awesome. It was so motivating for us all, but so wonderful just to see how well the kids did. So it was good.
Yeah, I guess I'm lucky enough we had a curriculum day where we looked at, you know, a lot of writing samples and tried to sort of map them a little bit with progression. And there was only a pretty small percentage of kids that you know, were below where they needed to be, and that was mid-year roughly. Yeah. And I think the other thing, you've obviously done a lot of great stuff this year in writing. I think capturing the whole writing process and as well as the reflections at every unit.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you want to talk to any of that, or I know there's some key things that I think everyone needs to hear, but what are you thinking about either of those?
Yeah, well, I think naturally we are reflective, but we did reflect on being reflective, and it's all well and good to talk about it, but if it's not documented, you know, are you just still doing the same thing over and over again? So I guess we'll talk about the poetry unit. So poetry got put to the side during COVID. So I had never taught poetry in prep at all. And we decided to bring it back this year, which was really exciting and so wonderful. And, you know, we loved it. The kids loved it and the outcomes were amazing. But it was nice at the end of the unit or during the unit, we had lots of things that we thought, oh, we should have done this differently or this at a different time. So we added into our unit planners, and we've made a point across the school is that once we've finished a unit, we go back to that planner, and at the top of the planner, we put our reflections in. So, you know, what went well, what was really good about it, what would we do differently, or, you know, what would we change next time? And I think for us, we were doing a rhyme unit in spelling, an inquiry unit alongside poetry. But what we reflected on is that we wish we had have done that prior to starting the poetry unit, because then the kids already had some background knowledge around rhyme, but we would have already had some word lists around rhyming words that we could have pulled from. So, that's gone straight into our planner, and we will document that now so that we can make sure we start that unit earlier and front load the kids before we get into poetry, so that unit is a whole lot better.
Makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, it does.
and I think it's just so important to do that reflection. And you and I spoke yesterday about, it's good to do that reflection, but then it's got to be practical as well. We've got to, put things in place for next year well in advance to take these things into account.
Yeah. And we've got to make sure that reflections and that what would we change goes in somewhere or is documented somewhere, so that if I'm not in prep, somebody else can see that and flag that and think, oh yeah, we need to do this earlier. So we've got to share that, because it's no good then, we spoke about this yesterday, opening up that unit and then thinking, oh, we haven't done the rhyme unit, we should have already done that. So we've got to pull those reflection out and make sure they do get acted upon.
Well, I guess now if you ever do leave foundation, people could always watch this podcast,
Absolutely.
YouTube, whatever preferred medium there is.
Yes.
Let's change gears a little bit.
Yeah.
You shared a little bit of your different pathway into education. I'll probably double barrel question. What do you think was the biggest jump for you in your development as a teacher? And obviously, because I've seen bits and pieces, and and I see going well, wow, okay. And I wonder for you, what when was there this? I'm going really well, or this is really clicking for me, and if there was anything in particular, and probably whether you want to park the second part to it is probably the leadership aspect, and we'll come back to the leadership bit, but if it connects at all, obviously go with that. But I'll probably I'll ask a better question, or I'll try to.
That was the world's longest question.
Yeah.
I think I understand what you're asking, though. So I think when I started here, I had no idea about what good practice was as a teacher. And I think that, not that I want to open a can of worms, the unis really fail us in preparing us to be good teachers, or I think, it comes down to your placements. And I've never done a placement in a school like Woori who had a strong instructional model or a culture like this even. So I think of that teacher that you met when I started had no idea, absolutely no idea. I am that person who is your fake it till you make it type person, and that's honestly what I reckon I did for the first year and a half. But when I came here, in my head I thought, I'm brand new, I'm starting at the bottom, I'm going to sit here and I am going to just be in the classroom, learn as much as I can, be a classroom teacher, and that's it. And within my first year, I was already a team leader of a team with 2 other graduates. So I was leading 5, 6, and I was still in my first year technically of teaching, and I had 2 other team members who were brand new as well. So I sort of had no choice but to step up. And my whole career, I've always just been extended in what I'm doing. And I think maybe that's because I'm the type of person that you can throw a challenge at and I'll just take it on. So that's really pushed me, but I've never worked alongside an experienced teacher either. I've always worked alongside someone who is new like me or has had less experience. So it's meant that any opportunity I've had to soak up as much knowledge I can. And luckily here at Woori, I'm surrounded by experts, and the culture here is so supportive that I've had the opportunity to watch other teachers teach and be in their classrooms, and we do such great PL that has pushed me and extended me. We do a lot of filming, and often I would log in to where all the videos are kept, and I would watch other teachers' videos and pick up little tips and traits from other teachers. But I think for me, I think that real jump is that I just really felt confident in my ability, because I've had a number of people come and watch me, and yourself included many times, which was daunting. I think Kay even was there that time when I taught Sammy, and you sat on this table, like this panel of people in my classroom. But yeah, I sort of realized, I've learned a lot and I can do this. And so stepping into prep, I continued with what was working, but was confident enough and felt supported enough to take some risks myself, and step outside of the square. And I'm in an environment where that's supported and celebrated, I guess. So I feel comfortable in my own abilities to keep extending myself. I hope that answers your question.
I think it was a better answer than the question.
Okay.
So I'll try and do a better job with the leadership question, or whether it is even a question. I think you did leading literacy in 2018 with Flick.
Yeah.
It was just the two of you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd forgotten that 2017 you were the team leader. I'd forgotten about that. And so I guess doing a bit of coaching now, like I'm not even sure exactly what your title is with leadership, and you're out of the room one day, two days. So what does the leadership side of things look like for you in the time when things are calm and you don't have to, jump in somewhere else? What do your 2 days look like?
Yeah, so I've got 4 coaches that I'm working with, all very different teachers at different stages of their careers. So it's generally me, and I guess it depends on the stage of the year too. At the start of the year, it was a lot of observation or modelling, or sitting with them while they're observing another teacher, and a lot of those professional conversations. So it's been a range of different things, but yeah, spending lots of time in classroom, watching teachers. I've supported them gathering resources around assessment, building their capacity in any areas that they want to, stretching myself to push already, and all the teachers here are amazing. But yeah, pushing teachers whose classroom practice is fantastic. Differentiation is fantastic. They know their students and they're catering for them. So what next? So stretching them further to become experts in other areas. So it's a lot of different things, and no day is ever the same. And it's been challenging, and it's like stretched me. But it's been awesome. It's been really good.
Yeah. And I think one of those coaching relationships, you've focused on a text and spelling, and I guess that's a little bit different again.
Yeah.
But that's working well.
Yeah, and I think this is the first time I've ever done a role like this, and I haven't really done any real specific training or official training around coaching. However, we have such great leadership here. And I have such a wonderful mentor that, it's been really good, because I'm supported all the way. And whenever I get to a point where I'm not sure what to do, I can reach out, and I have multiple ideas or suggestions of what to do. So it's really good, because we're such a team here. So, it's a coaching team, and it's not, these are just my coaches. We've all worked together, and been supported. So I've been able to draw on the expertise of those around me, so that I can support the people that I'm working with well. But yeah, the like little study group, I guess, I'm doing with one of the teachers around spelling has been really, really good. It's something I haven't done as far as coaching goes, but I can see we're both getting a lot out of it. So yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, I love it. All right, one more area, and then we'll probably start to wind it up, and we can always have a part 2, 3, 4, etc.
Sure.
I know you have a community of practice with foundation and kinder teachers. I guess I'm going to push and challenge you to do that, not based on geography.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you did throw me a little crumb last night, didn't you? And you got me thinking. But you're right. I would like this community of practice to be with like-minded people who are interested in, building a network of foundation teachers and kinders who want to work together to share resources and experiences, and build those relationships, around transitioning our kinder kids into school, and what can we do in the kinders to get them school ready? How can we support the kinders, and how can they support us? Initially I thought it needed to be network based, but it's probably going to take off if it's like-minded people. So I would love that.
Cool. Well, we'll put some feelers out, and hopefully we get a few people listening to this or watching this, and we'll stay tuned. But thanks heaps for catching up with me this afternoon, Howie. And
anytime.
I'm sure we'll have a part 2, and we might get some feedback from anyone around anything else that we want to hear, to pick your brain from. But thanks again.
Yeah, no worries. Anytime.